To begin, open up the standard shader scene in the scenes folder. I just threw some point lights here and I didn't even bother organizing them. We're going to get rid of them later anyway. This is just for the sake of explaining some terminology. If you open up any of your Unity 4 scenes and look at the material, it'll most likely say legacy shaders and then whatever it is that you chose before. Diffuse, bump diffuse, etc., etc. What a standard shader is a PBR shader, not the beer, but physically based rendering. That means it's modeled after the physical world without having all of these ad hoc shaders as we had before in Unity 4 and older versions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the materials and I'm going to find this shader, Atlas House. I'm going to duplicate it so we can have it in case we want it. And I'm going to rename this Legacy. And with the source assets, you'll already receive this material, so you don't have to do this. Or you can delete it and recreate it. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we go into the Atlas. We can actually select any of these because most of these materials are going to be under the same shader. And instead of choosing the Legacy Shader Diffuse, we're just going to hit Standard. And right away the material starts looking differently, obviously because it's a separate shader. And we see all of these properties open up here. And at first glance, it might seem that, oh, okay, so they basically took all of the shaders and combined them into one. And I would respond to that, well, yes, and they added on a few more features, but the caveat here is that the shader itself now allows for, I keep being redundant about this, a much more physically realistic look. That includes following principles of physics, such as energy conservation. It'll never reflect more light than it'll receive, Fresnel reflections, and how different surfaces occlude themselves. We've got a few modes up here. This is opaque, probably what you're going to be using for most of these. Cutout for, we'll have to specify the alpha in a separate texture, as we'll see once we do the trees. Fade, which will give us this see-through version of the house, and transparent, which will allow us to set up a transparency map. Okay, so we're going to go back into opaque, and this metallic setting up here, which you can alternatively specify as a specular value in the specular shading, whatever it is that your artistic preference. We can make a material more metal-like and also focus and show how sharp the reflections will be on the objects around it. This will work best with reflection probes, which we'll look into later. Okay, all of these should be familiar. With metallic, you can also specify a specular map. So if I click on this and if I type in Atlas Specular, right away I have a TIFF file, which as the alpha includes the building specularity. Normal map functions more or less the same. The rest of these I will cover in Mission, but I'm not going to cover at this time just to keep things simple and not too manual-like. Another cool feature of the standard shader is an emissive property. So I'm going to just create a simple plane, rotate it around 90 degrees on the X. Move it forward 90 degrees. And shrink this down. Move it somewhere towards the window. Okay. Alright. Zoom in. Alright. Okay, I've got a default material. Let's create a new one. I'm going to close models. Create a new folder for materials. And create a material that's just going to be called emit window. Okay, for this material, we have just this default material, so you can just drag this in or look this up via the circle. It is a standard material, and for the emission, click on the little circle up here and just choose the default particle. And let's do so for the albedo as well. Okay, so if we set the emission here to 0, we don't see much difference. But if we keep pumping this up, we actually see that this is lighting the surface outside. If I even go further and if I just turn off all of the lights, I'm just going to type in light. Okay, and I still have the plane here. It's going to be lighting my scene without the use of any lights. Okay, let's get rid of this. Command or Control D, let's turn the lights back on. And I'll conclude this here. In the next lesson, we're going to be exploring both the standard shader and global illumination in a little bit more detail because they are designed to work together.